there's so many different circumstances, and I'm not here to judge any of them because I've lived in every one of those circumstances at some point in stage of my life. And I've dealt with clients that have been in every single stage that you can imagine when it comes to having not enough, having just enough, having too much, but still not knowing where it's all going because nobody's ever taught them the rules of the money game. Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident. Good day, and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I'm going to discuss my origin story. The reason I'm going to do this is to dispel some misconceptions as to exactly what I do. I've had a few people say they think they know what I do. People that have been listening to my podcast are confused. Not everybody, but some. So I figured today it's about time, after being a guest on, I don't know, let's say 30, 35 podcasts, I have given my origin story for quite a few of those, not to the in-depth knowledge that you're going to gain today of my origin story. So let's get started. So like most, I've searched my whole life to have that perfect career, that perfect opportunity to go out and help and service the masses. Sometimes the way that I wish I was serviced, that I was taken care of by the retail industry, by the corporate industry, by other people that I've worked with. It doesn't matter what the circumstances. I've always wished that I had more than I was getting, and thought to myself in my early 20s, what can I do to make a difference? And I was struggling. I met a man who's been a mentor of mine for well over 30 years, who ended up hiring me. I worked for him in his alarm industry company and started out working in the alarm industry in the monitoring station, and it quickly elevated past that into starting to install closed access, card access, and closed security camera systems and complete alarm systems in general for both corporate and residential. And he convinced me that I'd be good at electronics industry, that I should go back to school, and encouraged me to go back to a technical college in my home city of Edmonton called NAIT to take electronics engineering technology, a 2-year, very intense program, which I ended up starting, and started with 200 people. 185 of us started and stayed in the program for the first semester. By the end of the fourth semester, when I graduated 2 years later, there was only 15 of us that started originally all together. 18 total graduated. 3 people were people that, for extenuating circumstances, needed some extra time to finish off and took a third year. But I managed to be one of those 15 people that graduated from this program. Very difficult, very intense program. And I left school, got hired by the government to do some work for an engineering department for the government of Alberta. I wasn't even doing electronic stuff. I was hired to do programming for them, some very high-end programming, because I did have some programming background and skill, and had taken some schooling on that as well. Wasn't my gig. Wasn't something I really liked. I only had a 6-month contract. After that contract ended, I ended up leaving and going to a company called Canadian Standards International. just about everything in your home today is certified if it's electronics. And even if it's not electronics, things need to be certified for safety reasons. Helmets are certified, toilets are certified, plumbing is certified to basically safe keep the general public from hazards. And I work for that company in their lab. I got hired to run their lab and do testing on electronics. I did explosion testing in regards to electronics components to see if they would, what intrinsic danger they held. I did testing on computers. I did testing on monitors. I did testings on spas. I did waterproof testing on enclosures for out in the energy industry. It pretty much was a fun job, right? I got to literally melt down laptops one time to see how long it would take before they'd become a hazard. Sounds kind of neat. It was a neat job. But in the process of working there, I was only there 11 months. And you're saying, well, if you liked it so much, why were you only there 11 months? Well, a few months into working there, I overheard one of the engineers and one of the manager of the facility. There's about 35, 40 employees. Manager and him were discussing the fact that they needed some computer stuff hooked up, some central stations hooked up to go back to what's called, for those a little bit younger, they at one time had mainframe computer systems where everything hooked up into, and you'd have workstations in a lot of companies. And they needed some more workstations hooked up. Plus, they had a couple that weren't working correctly. But the company that did the work for them Canada-wide, because Canadian Standards International is an international organization, and they have offices across Canada, and they obviously have a company that maintained their IT and took care of it. They couldn't come out to do the work for them. I can't remember the exact details, if they were just too swamped or what the case may be. And I piped up and said, hey, I could probably figure it out. Why would I say that? Well, because I was interested. I was always interested in working with my hands, and I loved working with technology. And I always have been a tenacious person. I love the challenge. I love being under pressure to figure out things. So they looked at me, kind of chuckled, and said, okay, we'll give you a shot. And they handed me these manuals to read to figure out this IBM mainframe system so that I could actually figure out how to do the cabling and how to set up their stations, how to configure them and get this, what they need done. Took the books. There's about 6 to 8 inches thick of manuals. Told them I'd figure it out and I'd get it done. And I'd start doing it in a couple days, because obviously I was working for them full time during the day. I had to do this at night. Meanwhile, I was also married and had, a family. So I literally went home, started reading the books, and was cramming down all this information. Had to go buy some equipment because I didn't have necessarily what I needed to do the specialized cabling and set up these stations. Guess what? I did it. Figured it out. Set up these stations, configured them, ran the cabling, this very specialized cabling that I had to solder ends onto, and figured out, ran it throughout the building, got it done what I needed to get done, got the system working. They were so impressed. They offered me their IT business for their facility, obviously after hours. So I started doing that after hours. And I started getting other contracts because of it. People found out that I had the knowledge to take care of things, and that I was tenacious and would get things figured out, and I was a reasonable cost. And within 11 months, I ended up having to give my notice and leave, because my computer company that I had started on the side as a side hustle had now become a real thing that had the ability to make me more income than I was currently making, plus drive me on a path of being that business owner that I wanted to be. And I brought on a partner. My partner and I, meanwhile, turned around before I left Canadian Standards, bought another computer company that was currently in operation with a full retail store, a service department, and a consulting arm. And we bought that company and proceeded for the next few years to run this operation. Unfortunately, the retail scene was very difficult. There was a lot of competition, but in that period of time before we closed down the retail side, I became the first business building computers, custom computers, that was building custom certified CAD stations, computer aided design stations, and I was building them for the engineering industry. Remember, I'd gone to school for electronics engineering. I worked at Canadian Standards. I knew a lot of engineers. I had contacts. And next thing you know, I was considered an expert in that industry. I was able to build the computers that they wanted them a specific way. And I actually was able to certify them because of my background with CSA. I became a certified manufacturer of computers in Alberta, one of the first to be able to sell certified computers that hospitals could buy, engineering firms could buy. They were intrinsically safe. And yeah, it was quite the ride. I ended up doing that for quite a few years, closed down the retail side because it wasn't profitable, and just ran that side of the business. Eventually, I stopped doing that as well and went into a full-time consulting side of it and started doing consulting for the province of Alberta, for the Edmonton City Police. For those that don't realize, Edmonton is a city in north central Alberta, approximately 1.5 million people for Edmonton and area. And I started doing consulting for different companies. And it was very lucrative, but it was also very stressful. Remember, tenacious personality. I was the type of person that was constantly on the go. I was constantly working late hours because they'd have things that needed to be figured out. For an example, worked for the Edmonton Police Service for their central head office, and then did work for their sub offices and actually took care of their staff. I was a contractor consultant taking care of fixing their help desk issues for timing, getting things done, helping them figure out some of their costing issues, dealing with the chief of police and other people within board structures to help them run more efficiently. So working long hours, it was very stressful, very time consuming. Left there and went to another company and helped them set up from scratch their whole networking system for their offices. And work days. I sometimes worked days without sleep because I was the type of person that knew that how important it was that the network was stable and things were operating efficiently, to a point where I ended up having health issues and came to a head after I finished that last contract. It was the summer of 2001, and I wasn't doing the greatest. And by September 11th, wasn't feeling the greatest. And September 11th, 2001, obviously we know what happened. A couple weeks later, I ended up having health concerns, severe health concerns, and I was struck with something called Bell's palsy. I basically had paralysis on the right side of my face. I could not see, I could not blink. The whole side of my face was paralyzed. None of the muscles would react, and I had splitting headaches. And I was very sick. Got taken into the hospital, got diagnosed with it, got put on a regimen of steroids and other things to help combat it, and was out of work for a few months. Fast forward to the spring of 2002, my mentor friend that helped me in the alarm industry to work for him and then get into go to school, pardon me, recommended I go to school, called me up and said, "Hey, I know you've done well for yourself and you're doing well for yourself, but I also know that you could use some financial help." And I thought, "Well, what do you mean by that?" He said, "Your financial house, I guarantee, is like most people, not in order and is in kind of a train wreck. You should actually look at getting into the financial services industry." And I said to him, "Why would I want to do that?" He says, "Well, you're good with people, you're tenacious, you're very kind, you're compassionate and caring, and you will make sure that you always do what's right for them. And let's face it, you could use the help yourself. Get your own house in order, understand the rules of the money game, live a life where you're not living it accidentally on the hamster wheel. going to work, go home, get paid. And he said, once you figure that out, you could actually go out and help others and have yourself a great business where you're truly making a difference in the world. Because I know in the computer industry, you're making 3 people happy, getting their projects up and running, getting things done, but there's 7 other people that are PO because you're only one person and there's only so many hours in a day. And that's part of the reason why you had such bad health issues last year, where you literally got so sick you couldn't work. Do you want that to happen again? And I said, well, let me think about it. Took on a couple more contracts over the next few months. And come the summer of 2002, I reached out to the person that he had put me in contact with that I had gone and seen in the spring to learn a little bit more about the finance industry and what are my opportunities would be. And I said, hey, I want to get that license. I want to do that thing that I need to do to get into this industry. And he said, well, here's the books. This is what it's going to cost you. This is a course. You need to go pay for this exam. Go write this exam. Once you're done this exam, you'll be able to work with our trainers here. They'll teach you the ropes, and you can go out and service and help families, with finance and insurance, basically life insurance, health insurance, critical illness, stuff like that. And, basically help people with any aspect of their life in regards to money and estate planning stuff, So I ended up getting the books in my hands and looked at them, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to go write on Monday, because he had told me that you could only write 1 day a week, and it was on Mondays. And he looked at me and laughed. He says, this is going to take you a couple months. There's a lot of reading, a lot of research you need to do before you can go write the exam. I said, well, I'm going to go do it. I'm going to pay the money. That next morning, so this was a Thursday, the next morning on Friday, I went to the provincial office. For those of you that are in the US, same as the state, went to the provincial office. I paid the money in order to write this exam on the Monday at 8:00. And I had my kids for the weekend. I was already at that point in time divorced, had joint custody of my kids, and it was my weekend with the kids. I took them to a place that we all know and used to love, a lot of us, Blockbusters. And I stocked up on movies, tons of different movies. And for the rest of the weekend, plugged tapes into the VCR, played movies for my kids to watch because they were all young. And I proceeded to study. When they weren't awake, I was studying even more efficiently. Obviously, it's hard to study efficiently when you got little kids sitting on you, climbing on you, wanting stuff, wanting help. But I did my best. Go back to their mom on Sunday nights, and I ended up studying the whole night. Didn't go to sleep. The next morning, Monday morning, got ready, was at that provincial office at 8:00, and I passed the exam. The interesting part of this story, I went to go see the gentleman that I got the books off of, and I walked into his office with a stone cold face. Behind my back, I had a piece of paper that said that I had passed the exam, and he looked up at me and he said, he stood up from his chair, came over, put his arm around me and said, that's okay. You'll pass it next time. And I looked at him and I smiled and I said, what do you mean? And I pulled out the paper from behind my back. I passed it this time. And I was the first person that had ever done that in that office. And as far as I know, I'm still the only person that they know of that has ever never studied it before, just got the books, studied over a weekend, something that takes people months to do, and went and wrote and passed the exam. My career started on September 19th, 2002, and I've never looked back. Initially, though, it was a struggle. Being an entrepreneur can be a real struggle. Being self-employed can be a real struggle. Remember, I had been self-employed prior with my computer consulting firm and understood that it takes a lot of work. But now I'm in a brand new industry, don't know a lot about finance, and being assigned to a trainer that was really a transactional thing. That's part of the problem in my industry, in the finance and insurance industry, not just in Canada, in the US and around the world, is very transactional. Press hard, 3 copies, transaction done, and no real digging deep, finding out what is really causing the person strife and trials and tribulations in their life, understanding why they're living a life of more days in the month than they have money, understanding why they're going to bed at night in quiet desperation, not just selling a person a product. So after about 6 weeks, I've literally fired my trainer. I didn't really employ him, but I didn't want his help anymore. So I told him, you know what, I'll figure this out on my own. I, being a very tenacious person, went around to our big brokerage office from office to office and talked to people that had been doing it for X amount of period of time, contacted product partners, found out exactly what it would take to, utilize their products, and could they teach me some things about how to utilize these products, but in a more relationship driven way. And over the next period of time, I worked hard at it, and it was a struggle. The first year I made like a little over $8,000 in commission, but being the tenacious person I am, over that first year I had worked and learned a lot, and I had created some momentum. From September of 2003 to March of 2004, I made over $147,000. I broke records in the company around North America, and it was in the top 10 for income for a personal person to do. And I was only going into my second year. So it wasn't even a year and a half into my finance insurance career, and I broke records, and I created systems and things that I still use today to help people learn how to live life on purpose and not by accident, and teach them that they don't have to live on the hamster wheel of life. They don't have to live a life of quiet desperation like I had lived for so many years. I lived on that hamster wheel of life and lived in that state of quiet desperation. And I won't tell you it's been a perfect ride for me the last 21 years. I've had times where I've gone back into the quiet desperation. I ended up in 2008 getting my kids full-time and not joint anymore, now full-time, being a single dad, having all my children. I have 5 kids, and 4 of them ended up coming to live with me full-time, trying to build my industry. I had to realize that I had to do some more changing. My kids needed me to be there to take them to extracurricular activities, to raise them and be the present parent that they needed. But I also needed to have income. I found it very, very difficult to be able to work, and ended up having my income slide backwards about 30-40%. And just before my kids come to live with me, I was offered an opportunity that most people would have died to have, where I could have expanded my finance business tenfold, and it would have been in a very short period of time, have been bringing in 7 figures myself personally on a yearly basis. But for me, life isn't about money. Do I like money? Absolutely. I like paying bills. I like having food on the table. I like having a roof over my head. But my family means everything to me. That's the way I was raised, and that's the way I am. And a lot of what I'm talking about, I talk about in my book too, called Give a Heck. You can see it over my shoulder. It's how to live life on purpose, not by accident. I talk about it because it is a great starter for you, for your family, for your business, to teach you some of the things that I've gone through, that you can surmount pretty much anything in life, from health issues. You can figure things out with very little, ability. You don't have to be super smart. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. You just got to be tenacious and want to change and be stuck of being in that rut, on that hamster wheel. So I ended up having my kids full time. Turned away the opportunity of being that person making a 7-figure income, and was lucky I was making $40,000-$50,000 a year, raising 4 kids full time, having all the bills and all the responsibility of somebody though that was making a good 6-figure income. How did I get past it? Well, I had to realize that what had I been doing for my clients all those years? I've been helping them goal set. I had been helping them budget. I had been teaching them how to live a life on purpose and not by accident. And I had to do a literal life check and go back to what had gotten my clients and me originally onto a track to living a life on purpose. Got back on purpose, living a life, part of me on purpose, and just like the little engine that could, the whole time I think I can. And then I changed that. I know I can. I know I can. The same thing I've been teaching my clients for the last 21 years is you can do it. You just sometimes need a coach. You need a mentor. You need somebody to help you to be able to see the forest for the trees. And those that don't understand, budgeting and goal setting are two of the key factors of helping people understand and get forward in life, to know what they want today, what they want in the short term, what they want in retirement, what they want even when they pass away. How much do they want to leave to their loved ones? Do they want to leave anything to their loved ones? Do they want to leave something to a charity, to their church? The list goes on, but it all takes preparation. Luck is a loser's excuse for a winner's completion. I heard a famous man say that years ago on a stage at a conference in 1993, say, luck is a loser's excuse for a winner's completion. There's nothing to do with luck, right? Preparation and planning, and sometimes if you need help, there's nothing wrong with that, can help you win, can help you understand how to live a purposeful life and really learn the rules of the money game and win, and literally have a life where you're living at whatever level you want. I'm not here to tell you need to be a millionaire. I'm not here to tell you that you are not good enough. I'm not here to tell you that you're not making enough. I'm here to say where you're at now, you need to literally peel back the layers of the onion, and maybe you need help. Maybe you need somebody to help you do that so that you can make a better educated choices. So when I sit down with somebody, I ask a lot of questions. I educate them about how to goal set. I educate them on the powers of why budgeting is so key. That if you know you're spending $1.50 a month and you're only bringing in $1, why long-term that is impossible for anybody, individual, family, business, to survive. That literally, if you learn to live a purposeful life, and you learn to put down your goals. And of course, I assist people with that, and then apply the numbers against those goals, because let's face it, just about 100% of all goals require some sort of financial backing. So you need to have your numbers in check, or understand where your numbers are at and what are the stages and processes you need to do to make sure that you can get to a point where you're living a month of just being broke, where you bring in $1, you spend $1, instead of being absolute broke, where you're spending $1.50 and only making $1. So I've been doing that and utilizing that for families for now over 2 decades, and it works. You have to be willing to work, though. You have to be one of the willing to understand, do you really want help? Are you willing to figure out what your money monster is? Are you willing to have a conversation, maybe more than one conversation, where we just figure out what caused you to get where you're at? Because that's where I start. Base one is figuring out how you got where you're at, analyzing your current debt situation, your number situation. Maybe you're somebody that's not in debt, but you just don't understand, why do I spend what I bring in and I have nothing extra, and I'm not really accumulating anything for vacations, or to go, to be able to retire someday, to be able to help out family. You don't have anything extra, and you're just wondering, well, why is this the case? So it's not always a case that somebody's broke. They're just living from paycheck to paycheck, and they're sick and tired of it, and they want to understand why. It all starts with the holistic approach of figuring out what caused you to get to this circumstance. Was it knowledge that you learned from your parents? Maybe your parents were always living from paycheck to paycheck, or they were living broke, or they were living super broke. They were beyond broke, or they were literally spending more than they brought in, and were in debt all the time, robbing Peter to pay Paul. There's so many different circumstances, and I'm not here to judge any of them, because I've lived in every one of those circumstances at some point in stage of my life. And I've dealt with clients that have been in every single stage that you can imagine when it comes to having not enough, having just enough, having too much, but still not knowing where it's all going because nobody's ever taught them the rules of the money game. Nobody's ever taught them to be tax efficient. Nobody's ever taught them how to save first, spend later. What do I mean by that? Well, that's another thing I get asked quite often. What do you mean by, save first, spend later? Well, we'll use $1 again. If you're making $1, I'm going to help you understand after we understand your numbers. If you're in debt, figure out how much we're going to utilize to pay off your debt and make a plan of attack. Maybe you can't save right away. Sometimes it's literally impossible. But the peace of mind you'd have if you were saving 10 cents of that dollar and learning to live on 90 cents every month, knowing that you're having another 10 cents put away toward your future, whether it was toward having a paid off vacation, whether or not it was toward literally retirement, being able to retire, having an emergency fund. How nice would it be to know that you have an emergency fund? Hot water tank breaks down, vehicle breaks down, and you have an emergency fund to pay for this stuff. You don't have to necessarily use a credit card. And again, you have to do what you have to do to survive. But to live a purposeful life takes planning. It's not hard. It's time intensive in the sense that you have to be willing to put in the time to learn what it is that I'll teach you. Be honest with yourself, be honest with me, and start putting things down on paper. Goal set. Figure out all your numbers. Understand what needs to be taken care of and literally categorize what's important and what can wait. And learn one thing that I've been teaching my kids since they were very little: the difference between a need and a want. How many of you out there understand the differences between a need and a want? Well, there's a difference. A need is something that you need to have. If your vehicle's broken down and you work across the city 20 minutes, 30 minutes away, maybe there's no public transit to get there and you have to drive. You have to be able to get kids to school because you don't have good busing service, whatever the case may be. That is a need if your vehicle breaks down, right? So that's something that if you need to use credit and you don't have any cash, you're going to have to. But let's say you want to go away for the weekend. You want to go and spend $1,000 and go away. For us, maybe it's a trip to the mountains. You want to go skiing, or you want to go, it's summertime, you want to go to the mountains, go hiking and go to the lakes. You want to go fishing, whatever the case may be. Yet you can't even pay your bills consistently. You're always in overdraft or using lines of credit and credit card, and you're going to go do it. You're going to go spend that $1,000. Is that really a need? No, it's a want. It's something that you want. It's something that you want to do. And that's something you need to learn. And once you start analyzing it, when you go to purchase anything, even at the store, your brain will start becoming hardwired to understanding, and you'll start saying to yourself, that's really not a need. Or pardon me, that's really not something that I need in my life. That's a want. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to save that money. We'll use the example of the vacation for the $1,000, and I'm going to have a staycation. I'm going to have a vacation at home, and I'm going to use that $1,000 to save toward my future, or save toward a vacation next year that I can take and pay cash for it. It's not going to be on a credit card, lines of credit, overdraft, whatever the case may be. And pat yourself in the back, because that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make, is they buy things thinking it's a need when really it's a want. And if they realized what is a need in their life and what is a want, and always took care of their needs first, and if there's extra, had it planned out, had it goal setted as a want, and still had all their needs met, now they're that much better off. So in a perfect world, if you're making $1,000 a month, and you can save $100 every single month, and 90% of that, or that $900, is what you budget and what you live on, but you always save first and then live off the difference. Most people that follow that strategy live a really, really intentional, purposeful life, and they will hit their goals time and time again. And again, that savings, that $100, that 10%, it would be even better if it was 20% or $200. But we start somewhere. Maybe for you, it's 5%. We start out with 5%, and you learn to live off 95% of what you bring in, and your budget is structured that way. Well, what's budgeting? People go, ooh, budgeting. I don't like budgeting. But guess what? Budgeting helps you live an intentional life. If you mark every single thing down, and yes, getting a haircut. Yeah, I know I don't need a haircut. For those that are watching, you know I'm bald. For those listening, I'm telling you I'm bald. I don't need haircuts. But I get families that say, well, why do I need to put a haircut down in the budget? Well, where does the money come from? Well, out of my bank account. So don't you think it's important to understand every single thing that comes out of your bank account, every single thing that might cause you to go into overdraft or have to use a line of credit or a credit card to survive? You put it down oil changes, you put down gifts, and it literally shows a pattern. I've been using the same spreadsheet. I've done some tweaks on it, obviously. Same spreadsheet for 21 years with my clients and for myself to help myself live a purposeful life, to ensure that I am living within my means, and for the understand that there's going to be certain months that it's going to be more costly. I even get people to budget presents. Well, why would I do that? I just go out and buy whatever for John or Sally or whatever for my kids. And I'll say to them, well, that's part of the problem. You tell yourself you're going to go out and spend, let's say, $50, and you see something and, oh, it's 75, it's only $25 more. That $25 more might be a payment or something to pay for your kids' extracurricular activities. If you're an individual, maybe that $25 is an extra payment to get your debt gotten rid of sooner, so that you're not paying so much interest to help other people fulfill their dreams and aspirations. Because really, at the end of the day, when you're paying interest on debt, you're helping others, live their lives, their best version of their lives, because you're giving away your money instead of keeping it for yourself and your family. So bottom line, we need to understand that budgeting is super powerful. There's so much more details, but it's not difficult to do. It just helps you live a purposeful life so that you at least can get to a point, if you are a person that's in severe debt, robbing from Peter to pay Paul, to live a purposeful life. And once you can live that purposeful life where you're at least broke, where you're making 1,000, spending 1,000, and we can work on making it so that it's even better. I work with people. I have a workshop series that I do with people. I've done it in front of many, many people. I've done it in front of a room of people, where I teach them the rules of the money game and teach them how to live purposeful, how they can look at all their expenses and understand that what a need and a want is, and through help and education, free up in a very short period of time, free up money, because people are spending money every single month where they shouldn't be spending it. They have the best cable package, satellite TV package. They have all these streaming services that they hardly utilize, yet $10 here, $20 there, $40 there. All of a sudden, $100 is freed up. That $100 can be used for so many different things. Saving for, again, vacation, saving for retirement, putting a child into an extracurricular activity that you've never thought you could afford to do, because you were giving your money away to people for a service that you weren't utilizing fully or utilizing at all. Again, there's so much more to it than that, but those are some of the things that I help people understand, to help them understand how to free up some money, so within their budgets, they end up having a month where they have more money than they do days in the month. The days in a month are gone. They still have some extra money, and that extra money can go to and utilize it to, again, if they're in debt, to pay off debt quicker. If they're not in debt, to save for a retirement so that someday they can retire, so they don't have to work the rest of their life, so that they can maybe help out family. Maybe they can just do so many different have different options. Maybe something as simple as, I've sat with clients that don't have life insurance. And life insurance, just so you know, as a financial planner, is the number one thing that a person should have in place to protect their family and protect themselves. Why is that? Well, statistically, the amount of people that pass away before they hit 65 is staggering. And all of a sudden now their family's left behind with no protection, no ability to replace your income, Now maybe they lose the house, lose the vehicle. Maybe they can't afford to, and they have to move back in with relatives in order to survive. When for pennies a day, you could have gotten them protection, but you didn't understand how life insurance worked. You didn't understand how economical and cost effective it can be. Guess what? You do a budget, you learn your numbers, we start understanding needs and wants, we start getting rid of some of the things that you don't utilize enough or never utilize and free up some money. You can get some life insurance. You can protect your family. You could be that person and it happens. They go to the local store and they come home and they get killed in a car crash. It happens. Look at the stats. Don't be that person that isn't able to protect their family. So I utilize all of what I've talked about to help people understand how they can put things in place, to live a purposeful life, which means living a life more comfortable today than you ever realized you could, right? Retiring in comfort, and yes, dying with dignity, so that you know if let's say you're on your deathbed. I've had this happen numerous times. You've got cancer. You know you're not going to survive, but you had gotten life insurance when you were still healthy, and it's going to pay out to your loved ones. Sadly, I have many cases of where that's happened, and it is a reality. And had we not gone through the process I just talked about, none of that would have happened. I had a couple that we utilized all what I talked about to help them goal set, to free up some money, to get rid of unnecessary expenses, to get out of debt, to start saving for retirement, put life insurance in place. Fast forward, decade later, husband gets cancer, husband passes away, life insurance pays out and protects the family. Takes effort. Is it complicated? No, not when you have somebody like myself that's willing to coach, mentor you throughout the process. So for those of you that are listening to this that have never realized what I do, this is what I do. I help people learn how to live a life on purpose and not by accident, and not go to bed at night in quiet desperation. I did it for far too many years, far too often before I got into this industry. During me being in this industry, it's happened to me because of the circumstances that were in my control, but also out of my control. Being a single parent with 4 out of 5 kids living with me full time, having to get them to their extracurricular stuff, having to pay for all their expenses, was time consuming, was mentally and emotionally consuming, and my bank account couldn't pay for it all on any of those fronts, emotionally, mentally, physically, right? Or financially, right out of the bank account. So it was, I can relate to anything you've possibly been through. And I can understand. I can definitely, empathize for your circumstances that you're in. So where did I go from here? Well, in 2017, one of the most traumatic things happened to me in my life. And you're thinking, well, what could be that traumatic that could happen? Well, in 2017, my 4-year-old granddaughter passed away. She had some health issues and had been in and out of the hospital since before she was 2 years of age, spent a couple of her birthdays in the hospital, and she passed away shortly after she turned 4. And it put me in a tailspin. I went into a grieving cycle where I just wasn't living a purposeful life. I was just skating by. I was dealing with my clients. I was still helping them effectively. But I've, once again, just like it happened in 2008 when I got custody of them, I stopped living a purposeful life for myself. I was just skating by and I wasn't tracking anything, and I was just spending money, and I was doing whatever I wanted to do. And I was living on that hamster wheel again. And I woke up one day and I said to myself, I got to change. I got to get back into the things that I've done, all the personal development and all the, associations in my life. I need to associate with people that can help me get back on track. And I wasn't sure of how I was going to do that because I was also still grieving. And even today, years later, I'm still grieving the loss of my granddaughter, but we learned to accept and control things within our mindset, our 6 inches between our ears, differently as time passes. And come up to 2019, you know what happened in 2020, obviously. End of 2019 rolled around. I was kind of, I joined a very successful mastermind group, and that mastermind group was, was helping me feel better and was starting to elevate me. 2020 rolled around. I was starting to get back on track. I was going to have one of the best years in my business that I had had in a long time, just based on projected business I was going to do within 2020, and the pandemic hit. A few weeks before the pandemic, I ended up joining a group called 365 Driven, and a guy by the name of Tony Watley, who I had met through this other organization called the Arate Syndicate, which was a bunch of entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs getting together in a mastermind circumstance and at conferences to help each other level up our mindset and to think differently. So I met Tony through that, and he started up an organization. And from that organization, I ended up learning so much in 2020. One of the things, though, he said to us is, where are you going to be on the end or at the end or the other side, pardon me, of this pandemic? We don't know if it's going to last days, weeks, months, years. Where are you going to be? Are you going to be one of those people that say, oh, I wish when I had all that free time, I had done different things in my life? Or are you going to be that person that just sat on your hands and watched television, ate junk food, and just felt sorry for yourself and followed the doom and gloom that was going on around the world because of it? And I said, I'm going to be a person that's going to elevate and change. And he did stuff. One of the things he did was a video challenge to help us learn how to be more confident on the screen. And prior to that, I was the guy that would run across the road if somebody wanted me to be on camera. If somebody wanted to interview me, I avoided it. I would go talk on stages and stuff in my finance industry. I do educational seminars, I do workshops, I'd go up and talk in front of people about, rules of the money game and stuff like that, some of the things that I've talked about. But I never really wanted to do anything to do with public speaking, whether it was recording it, posting it, doing whatever. I took on the challenge. Tony said, hey, what can you guys do in 30 days if you put your mind to it? What I want you to do is to do a video every single day and post it for the next 30 days. Well, I did video day one, March 1st, 2020, pardon me. And he said, you got to do these videos for 30 days. We didn't say nothing about whether they were live or recorded, but somebody in the group reached out to me and says, hey, these need to be live. They're not recorded. So I thought, So I started day two. I did it live. I never checked with Tony. I never checked with anybody else in the group, and I started doing them live. After 30 days, he challenged us to do 60 days. I said, I accept. Then he said 90 days. I said, I accept. I finished 90 days. Then he said, who can do it for a year? I did it for a year. At the end of the first year, he said there was only myself and one other person. That other person had already quit. He had made it a lot of videos, but he had missed a few days. I hadn't missed a day. I said, I'll do another year. Guess what? I did 2 years. I believe I'd have to check the number top of my head. I did 837 videos, 837 live videos. I did every single day, 7 days a week, off the top of my head. I had a running journal of ideas. I'd have people reach out to me and say, hey, why don't you talk about this today? Or I'd have a conversation with a client or family or friends, or I'd be on a mastermind and something would, like a light bulb will go off in my head, and I'd detail it down. This is what I need to talk about. And I'd write things down, and then I'd pick from that list. But after a couple of years of doing that, it was burning me out. I ended up closing that chapter and moving on. What else did I accomplish during the pandemic? I ended up creating the Give a Heck brand. My last name is Heck. So I decided, with some help and with some encouragement from people, to create the Give a Heck brand. By July of 2020, I had applied for the trademark, and which just came through recently. timing and government through the pandemic, and even after the pandemic, the timing has been incredibly slow. I ended up again applying for the trademark. I got a website custom built for Give a Heck. By the fall of 2020, I ended up starting a podcast. So it was actually not in the fall. It was November 2020. I started a podcast that is now in the top 5% of podcasts in the world and listened to in 42 different countries. Am I pleased with that? Absolutely. I've got to interview and have conversations with some of the most remarkable people from all walks of life. The whole idea and concept of the podcast, which you're listening to right now, is people that have gone through trials and tribulations, that have struggled, that have learned and are now learning to move forward in life and give a heck about others, because they had to learn about giving a heck about themselves and climb out of the valley of despair and learn to live a purposeful life, and now are doing it and helping others do the same. So that's what I did. I created the podcast. I also, in October 2020, started writing a book, which I released in March of 2021, called Give a Heck, How to Live Life on Purpose and Not by Accident, which is an Amazon bestseller book that talks a lot about what I've just been talking about. Obviously, a lot more details about my younger origin, not just my origin from, literally being a young adult. It talks about my origin and some of the issues I had gone through as a child, with severe asthma, allergies, getting bullied, just things that, even my first entrepreneurial journey, which was being a paper boy at 12 years of age and learning how to have to collect money, write checks, make sure I had enough to pay the paper company, and then what was mine, the difference. Right. And literally learned how to deal with difficult customers that didn't want to pay their bills, and, just stuff like that's in the book as well. Fast forward 3 years later, I have done 150 episodes of this podcast, a little over 150. Been promoting and working with promotion of my book. Been working on my speaking career to go from being a speaker, of just a captive speaker in the finance industry, to being on stages around the world, so that I can educate and help people learn how to live the rules of the money game, to live a purposeful life, and why it's so important to understand rules of life. That money drives everything that happens in our lives, that money has no personality. It's not good or evil. It literally is a tool in the hands of a person that's good or a person that's evil. And why not utilize it for good for your life? Why not learn those rules of the money game? Why not realize that there is simple steps and there is people out there that can help you? Am I going to be everybody's flavor of the day? Meaning, will everybody want to utilize me and my services, whether they live in Canada, the US, Australia, whether they live in the UK, anywhere in Europe, anywhere in the world? I've had conversations with people around the world where I've sat and talked to them about what it is I do. Obviously, if you don't live in my province of Alberta or the province of BC where I'm licensed, I can only help you out with all the stages up to the fact of needing a product or service. But guess what? That product and service, there's tons of people who will sell you that product or service around the world that'll be transactional, but you'll be controlling. You'll be the pilot of your ship. You'll be the one that'll be making sure all the holes have been plugged in your financial and your life boat. You will literally understand how to live life on purpose. You'll be more in charge, and you can even have me help you deal with these individuals in other countries, just having the conversation to make sure they understand and don't try to sell you something that you really don't need, so that you can stay on track to the plan and program that we put in place, the roadmap for your life, which you can constantly use to correct your course. I can be your co-pilot the rest of your life to help you. You can reach out to me. I get people today that have been clients of mine. I've seen a client today that's been a client of mine now for 20 years. Wanted to get together, had a simple conversation, reviewed his stuff. He's nearing retirement. Was he nearing retirement when I first had him as a client? No, he was not. I actually knew him before I got into this industry. He was a friend of a friend, and he found out that I got into this industry, took a chance on me, and the rest is history. He's lived a controlled life. He's very satisfied where he's at. He's going to be able to retire comfortably, but he still wants us to go over his roadmap. He still wants to talk about things. He wants reassurances. And guess what? I'm more than happy to do it. And that is why I am doing what I do, and why I have the Give a Heck brand, is to reach out and touch more people in regards to their finances and their life, and coach them and teach them simple little rules where they can learn things, not even about money. I coach people about on life skill circumstances and situations, on how to have proper associations, how to never have a bad day, how to live a life where you live by what I call the 70-30 principle, where you only associate with people that you know 70% of the time, whether you're associating with what they post, what they write, what they say to you face to face, or what they say in a group, that 70% of the time it's going to make you, glad, going to make you smile. It's going to make you reflect, going to make you think, that's a pretty interesting thing that they wrote, that they said. Maybe I can learn from them. And 30% of the time, they might say something in print, in writing, or in a individual to you, or in a group, that kind of it doesn't really sit right with you, but is not morally or apprehensively repulsive or makes you sick to your stomach. It's just something that you just don't necessarily agree. So 70% of the time, when that person leaves your site, whether it's like a social post or something that they've texted you, or something they've said face to face to you, you can't wait to see them again, because you know that it's going to be a really engaging, a thoughtful, and a conversation that you want, or something that you want to see or read from them. And 30% of the time, it can't be perfect, but people in my life, if they ever get to 50%, they're gone. If 50% of the time I have to wonder whether or not I need to take a shower after I talk to you because I feel dirty, or you said something that just always doesn't, it's going to, one time you're going to say something that's going to make me smile, the next time it's going to make me wince and disgust me, you're not a person that needs to be in my life. I need to have people in my life that are very engaged and very supportive. So those are some of the things I teach people as well. Teaching them on their journey of how to live life on purpose, not by accident, is to live intentional, to understand their associations around them, from what they watch, what they listen to, who they associate with, will affect their daily life and will help them live a more purposeful life when they're in charge and in control of what comes into their sphere of their life, and what they're going to allow to influence them, who they're going to allow to influence them, and whom are they going to influence with their changes in their life. What changes can you do if you change your life? Will it affect and make your family better off? Will it make things happier in your life? Will it help you steer away from addictions? Because a lot of addictions in life today are started and continue forward in life because of the fact that people are sad. They're depressed. They drink too much. They smoke too much. They literally have addictions where they're, are just not healthy for their lives. And they eat too much. Maybe they're a depressive eater because they're depressed, they eat too much and their health gets worse. But regardless of that, there's so much more that the Give a Heck brand has become, that I have become in the last 21 years. I just wanted to let you know that the Give a Heck podcast was designed to uplift and bring other people's stories to the surface, to make you realize that there is a lot of good people out there. They're out there helping and making a difference. And I realized, though, because I've had quite a few people confused as to what it is that I do, that aren't familiar with me because they aren't a current client, a current friend, current family member, or somebody that has hasn't heard me speak, for an example, maybe, or done a workshop or whatever the case may be, I wanted this to be a little bit of an introduction to the origin of who I am. And where am I going? Well, I'm always on the climb. I'm always trying to better myself, personal development. I listen to audiobooks. I listen to good podcasts. I read things that are going to uplift me, that are going to keep my mindset on the high end, not on the low end. And I live a life of gratitude and gratefulness. So if I had to leave you one last closing message, like I asked my guests to do, live a life of kindness. Always be kind. Always be grateful that you have the opportunity to wake up. First thing I do in the morning is I have gratitude for being alive. And I literally thank God for being alive, because I am a faith-bearing Christian, Catholic Christian. You don't have to be. You can worship whatever you want. You can believe whatever you want, but you can still live a life of gratitude, waking up, being grateful for being alive, for being given another shot, another opportunity to make a difference in your life, to make a difference in others people's lives. I am grateful throughout my day. I'm grateful that I have the ability to have food in my fridge, the roof over my head, the ability to make a difference in other people's lives. And you can be that way too. So again, last closing message, be kind and be grateful for what you have, and don't look around at what other people have. Just look at your own life and better your own life, and let other people worry about what's going on in theirs. Don't be jealous. Don't be that person that's going, oh, look what John has. He's so lucky. Look what Sally has. She's so lucky. How about you just be appreciative for what you have and do whatever it takes to live a purposeful life, and live a life on the climb to always better yourself, to live a more purposeful day and be happy. I look forward to talking to you guys soon. I appreciate you being a listener of the Give a Heck podcast. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Just go to giveaheck.com. You can go to the contact button. You can book a call. We can get on a call, or you can email me and Dwight at giveaheck.com. And we can literally, have a conversation, whether it be through email, whether or not it be, through a Zoom call. We can communicate. And if you're a listener of this show and you like my show, I'd really appreciate you sharing it with others. That's how my show continues to grow. And that is how we can go out and help the masses, one person at a time, giving them a little bit of information so they can have some hope for a better tomorrow and quit living that life of quiet desperation and on that hamster wheel. I look forward to talking to you soon. God bless you all. Peace out and take care. Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.